Good evening and welcome to a candidate forum brought to you by HISPAC, the Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and our committee here from HISPAC. Tonight we will be discussing with the candidates for the District Commission of Palm Beach County, number 3, district seat, the seat number 3, which is going to be the subject of the general election in November. And with us, we have Commissioner Dave Kerner, and we also have John Maples, who is running against Mr. Kerner. I've explained the format to the candidates before we started the forum, so I am going to go straight ahead and ask Mr. Kerner to provide his introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Lustig, and thank you to the entire board of HISPAC and everybody watching on Facebook and participating in our democracy. I know how much time and effort it takes into vetting candidates, and I know there are many important races in this county, and so your vetting and commitment to educating the community on our candidacy is very much appreciated. My name is Dave Kerner. I'm 37 years old. I'm born and raised here in District 3, here in Palm Beach County. Was educated here in this county. Then I went off to Suncoast and then the University of Florida and the police academy. And my family's been in public service their entire life. It's an important ideal to us. My father served as deputy chief of police here in District 3 at the Lake Worth Police Department back when they existed from the late 60s until the mid 90s. And my brother serves as a judge here. My mom used to work for the federal government. And then we have a long history of family service, both here and throughout the United States. I've served in government, like I said, since I was about 19. I became a police officer up in North Florida and served for about 7 years in that capacity. Eventually, I became very interested in policy making and wanted to get a deeper understanding of how our laws are made and how the decisions in society are made. And I ended up going to law school, and I've practiced law since 2010 when I graduated the University of Florida Levin College of Law. During that time, I also served in 2010 as a special prosecutor and was in the courtroom a lot with the state attorney's office. I served in the Florida House of Representatives here locally in District 87, which is a minority majority district of Hispanic people throughout Palm Beach County, and served in that capacity for 4 years. And then eventually I wanted to be home. I wanted to be closer to both my family, and I wanted my decisions to be more impactful in our local community. And so I left the Florida House of Representatives and I ran for the Board of County Commissioners in 2016. I can tell you that after my 4 years in this position, I've grown I have a lot of respect for our county government, the resources that it has, and the policy issues that it tackles. I've really enjoyed serving on the Board of County Commissioners. I serve now as the county mayor, which is typically a ceremonial position, but during the course of this pandemic, it has tasked me with serving as the representative head of this county government, both to the state government and all the other operational units of government, and to the community, really, in terms of communicating. What I found about our local government, and this is true of any local government, is that the impacts and the votes that you take are seen right away, and they're very meaningful to the people of this county, whether they're good or bad. It means a lot to their quality of life. And so we've really come together as a board. We've pushed some very instrumental reforms for the everyday working person. We can talk about whether it's a Hispanic family or any other member of this community, access to some of the things that we are pushing in terms of affordable housing, women in minority-owned business enterprise contracts. All of those affect the day-to-day lives of people that haven't had the opportunity to own companies in this county or in this country, like many of the white male business owners that have over generations and generations. And so this board was one of the first in the state of Florida to pass the minority and women-owned business enterprise, giving direct opportunities to members of the minority community and women of the minority community that own businesses. And it's really been a huge success. The other big policy issue that we've pushed that I've been at the tip of the spear of is our affordable and workforce housing program. And unlike other communities that really want to do the right thing, the devil's in the details. So instead of giving credits or encouraging workforce housing structured pricing for homes, we've really pushed the boundaries of being progressive in this regard by mandating that developers who turn a very tidy profit, by the way, from the land use decisions that we make if we pass their application. We require them to start at 25% workforce housing, either on site or built outside elsewhere in our community. And we started to deliver those units to the community. And I've had the opportunity as both the resident commissioner and as the county mayor to hand over the keys, so to speak, in a ceremonial way to the people that have been able to purchase homes within our county, whether they're townhouses, condos, single family units. It's really been an awesome thing to see members of the community benefit from the actions of government instead of just siding with big business. And so I've always served in government in a way that I think is ethical. The conduct and the way that I conduct myself as an elected official is very important to me. And I think that sets a great example for the future leaders of this county and for the electorate. I am very passionate about serving. I'm very passionate about being reelected. There's nowhere else I'd rather serve. I think the potential for this board and this unit of government to do great things for this county continues. We have wonderful partner agencies like the Sheriff's Office, all of our constitutional offices, our school district, and to be part of this government that gets to assist them has been an honor of my lifetime, and to assist the members of this community, which really are my friends and family and neighbors, having been born and raised here. So I think my record of service in the government is very important. I think that you've had an opportunity to see me lead. You've had an opportunity to see me serve. You know who I fight for. You know what I'm passionate about, and you know the way that I conduct myself. And if I'm reelected, I will make that commitment, obviously, to continue to serve in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. And Mr. John Maples, your turn.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to everyone on the board, the HISPAC and the Action Committee. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. Again, I want to give a quick shout out. It's National Hispanic Heritage Month. So quick shout out there to everyone watching and listening to celebrate you and your achievements and the added bonus that you brought to our culture and our community. I want to start there, but a little story about myself. I'm a Florida native. I've lived in Palm Beach County for the last 16 years. I went to Palm Beach Atlantic University, All-American basketball player, athlete. Met my wife there. I stayed in Palm Beach County, and I built a small business here in Palm Beach County in the financial services industry. I'm a financial advisor by trade. I have my team, and we work to create efficiencies in people's budgets and planning. And so my focus really is working with the small businesses and growing their ability to take care of their families and retire one day. I am a government delegate also with my company, Northwestern Mutual. So I, a few times a year, go to DC, the Hill, and speak to our current elected officials about retirement planning and advocate for the constituents that are in their states and really just planning and talking about how money works. So, diving into budgets, looking into how things are running and making sure they're being run efficiently is part of my career. A part of making sure that every dollar that is spent by my clients, the county, that someone's accountable for that and making sure that things are done properly. But, I've served on many different boards, one namely Families First. I was the chair of the board, recent past president. Families First has been in this community for the last 26 years, 30 years, and have really done great work. And I've been able to, as past chair, continue to grow their mission in this community. And I serve on several other boards, St. Mary's, my church, Family Church. I've served on their board as well. My wife and my family here, my child, we built our community, our life here in Palm Beach County. And really my focus right now is getting people back to work. I think that this community, the people in this community, they want to work, they want to take care of their families. Absolutely every person that I talk to, they're just like, hey, John, look, man, I just want to get back to work so I can take care of my family, so I don't lose my home, so I don't lose my business and all the things that I've worked so extremely hard for and invested so much in this community. As a matter of fact, I talked to a lady today, and she's on the verge of losing her home because she's been without a job. And so my focus right now is getting people back to work. The next thing that's extraordinarily important to me is making sure that as Florida is the 49th state receiving resource for mental health, behavioral health, to really get serious about that. I think this pandemic has exacerbated that issue. We've seen more suicides. We've seen more people suffering from depression. We've seen more people suffering from mental instability due to this season. And so really having a plan and looking forward to helping people through that season. But once that's completed, also part of that strategy is making sure there's an affordable place for people to live in Palm Beach County. I stayed here in Palm Beach County. Other people want to stay, but it's hard, really when it's rent's $1,800 a month for a 1-1. And so making sure that people can live, work, and play and enjoy Palm Beach County is also extraordinarily important to me. I take great pride in being responsible for the things I step up and lead, and I want to make sure that same responsibility is brought to the commission and to the board if elected, to serve the people, be a public servant to the people. That is my focus. That's why I'm running, to be a public servant and really kind of to take that leadership back to my college basketball days when I led the team and was captain, bringing that same intensity to the county commission to lead and move and push the ball forward and lead the charge. But I think most importantly right now in our community is getting people back to work is the most important thing right now. And as a small business owner, that's my priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. I appreciate the introduction, and we're going to move forward with the question and answer session. And I am going to ask Mirta to see if she has a question for you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Kerner, hi, nice to see you and thank you for coming. My question is for you. A few months ago, somebody wrote a letter to you guys commissioners about the creation or the establishing a Hispanic district. Commissioner Bernard suggests that he got one letter asking for a Hispanic district. Nevertheless, all these Hispanic organizations in Palm Beach County were not even asked their opinion about a Hispanic district. Would you support the creation of a Hispanic district for another district for the commission so we can have a representative?
Thank you, Merita, for the question, and thank you for your service in the press. It's a very important role that you play, and you ask very important questions, and we need to be held accountable. If you'll recall, during that process, Commissioner Mac Bernard brought forth a sort of a couple different types of structures to amending the charter to amend the composition and roles of members of the board. And what happened during that process, and as you know, with the Sunshine Law, we don't get to talk with each other about it behind closed doors, which is a very good thing. But when it was brought forward, initially it was brought forward with a strong mayor or a countywide elected mayor, then a countywide elected vice mayor. And then it transitioned to, at Mac's insistence, into basically a Hispanic district in Central County would have been the additional district. And I voted for it. There were only 2 members of the board that voted for it, both myself and Commissioner Mac Bernard. So what that tells us, first of all, to answer your question directly, Mirta, is yes, of course, I would support that. I led on that issue with Mac. I voted for it. And unfortunately it didn't pass. And that sort of highlights the larger struggle of the minority, in particular the Hispanic community in Palm Beach County. I would say contrasting it to Miami-Dade County, where there's a very cohesive and to a certain extent a longer existing population of well, maybe fragmented, but of Hispanic residents in Palm Beach County. This county struggles with that because the voice of the Hispanic family isn't heard as loudly as in other places in the state of Florida, like Miami-Dade. And the vote 5-2 against that minority district is a great example of that. But as you know, as a result of my vote, and as you know, Mirta, as a result of knowing me for many years and 10 years in public service as an elected official, that absolutely I would support that. And I would go one step further. Even though I've already supported it and voted for it, supporting things are great, but you need to lead, and we were given an opportunity to lead you need to use it wisely. And so I can tell you that not only would I vote for it, but I will continue to push and lead on that particular issue. And I think it's one that will come to fruition in this county in the near future.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. And Mr. Maples, do you want to provide your input or response as to that issue?
Thank you, Mr. Lusting and Murda. To your question, I was at that county commission meeting when Commissioner Bernard brought that to the board for a vote. My opinion is, if the Hispanic community or any community within Palm Beach County felt like they had a voice, you wouldn't have to single out one specific race to add to, or one specific community to add this commission. My other point is that if there was a Hispanic person that wanted to lead the charge and run for county commission, and we all should support that. But at the end of the day, what happens, guys, is that this becomes another expense for all of us as taxpayers out of the county, from the county budget. So now we're paying for another person on the county commission, when really what I think the Hispanic community, the Haitian community, the African-American community, the white community, every community is asking for is to be heard and to have a voice, to be able to communicate the need of the community, have the commission listen and hear, and to take action on behalf of the community. And I don't know if that means spending more dollars within the community. What I think it means is really getting down in the community and listening to what's being heard and what's needed, and then taking action on that. So Marta, I would tell you that I personally would be a listener, an active listener to the Hispanic community, to find out what needs they really have and to bring that to the committee and advocate for the Hispanic community and other communities within Palm Beach County. I think that what happens is, if we don't do that, and then we start singling out, and then there'll be there needs to be a black person there, seat specifically just for black people, and then there needs to be a seat specifically for this. It never really ends, and all it does really is it costs all of us more money. And so to be as efficient as possible, how can we be efficient? Well, let's just get down and listen to the people and work with them. And I think that's what everybody wants.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maples, and thank you to Mrs. Luaces from La Guia News for the question. Next, we have Ms. Veronica Vidal. Do you have any question for the candidates? You're on mute.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Maples and Mr. Kerner. My question is gonna be for Mr. Kerner, and then of course, I would like to hear your input. So Mr. Kerner, you said that a couple of your priorities has been affordable housing and the participation on minority business, small business, and woman-owned business. I sit in the board for the Office of Equal Opportunity for the last 6 years, so I know the statistics and the percentage and the effort that the county did with the disparity study. But however, my question will be in how it happens that you have an idea, what is the percentage of this affordable housing that the Hispanic working class, I mean, how much of the percentage the Hispanic working class has access to the affordable housing, and what is the plan? I mean, what is, if you can tell us how that works and how the Hispanic community can get access to that program.
Sure. Are you referring to the workforce housing and affordable housing rental and ownership program? So excellent question. How it works is when a land use decision is made by the board, let's say we go from AGR 1 unit per 5 acres, and then we go to 10 units per acre. That's the underlying land use. That land just increased in value by a significant amount, particularly in Palm Beach County, where land acquisition costs are so expensive. So what we've required by law is that as a result of that land use decision, the developer and owner are required to set aside up to 25% of those homes being built, or apartments or townhouses that are capped by law, by some documents that are filed with the clerk that attach to the land and the deed itself, that say you cannot charge more than a particular amount. And there's a CPI and a formula that's done. And it really reduces the price. I want to say don't quote me on this because it varies by land use and it varies by the type of residence. But for example, if the market value is 300,000 for the townhouse, typically it's capped at 150,000, and then the Board of County Commissioners provides funding for a down payment assistance that is doesn't have to be repaid by the purchaser. So it could be up to about $40,000 in down payment assistance. Those are real contributions by the government program to the people. Now, to the second part of the question, I can't tell you what the demographic breakdown is. I'm not even sure that's something that we track because it's not. We're not trying to sell 10
It
houses.
is on the applications. On the applications, ask if you are willing to answer if you are Hispanic,
right? And
so it should be some.
It's voluntary to respond, but we don't track in terms of closing how many it is. But certainly anyone that falls, it's not done by race or gender. It's done by what your yearly income is. So that's the way that we track it. I can't answer you on that particular issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. Mr. Maples, do you have any opinions concerning this program?
As far as the workforce housing for affordable housing, to your question of what percentage of Hispanics have access to that program, Ms. Veronica, I will find out the answer for you. I don't know the answer, but I will get you an answer and email you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ms. Vidal. Next, we are going to move forward, and I'm going to ask Santos Arroyo. He is a member of HISPAC, and he is the founder of the Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in Palm Beach County. And ask Mr. Arroyo, do you have any questions for the candidates?
Yes, I would like to address the question to John Maples first. John, given the fact, according to the U.S. Census projections, that our Hispanic population will increase in Palm Beach County anywhere between 30 to 40%, which will create more business opportunities and potentially increase county tax revenues. When elected to serve as county commissioner, why will you support the creation of a Hispanic multicultural community resource center where we can continue bringing together our community to work on social, cultural, and business development?
Yeah, great question, and thank you for that. I think a lot of communities are asking for that same thing, and they want that within their community. They want to be able to freely express their culture and share amongst other leaders the things that they've learned and the values that they had. I would definitely support having that community, and even I would take it one step further and invite police and other people to build relationships within our community, the African-American community, the Hispanic community, at those community centers to continue to further that relationship as well. I think part of business, part of community is part of everyone being safe and being able to work and grow their businesses and feel like they can do it safely. So I would definitely support a community center within the Hispanic community. I think that's a brilliant idea. And I think you can foster a lot of relationships. And, you know, when I was a kid playing sports, I grew up in a community center playing sports, and those coaches and those folks were kind of mentors and leaders to me. I didn't know it then growing up. You know, I thought they were just being tough on me, but I look back and they really kept me on the right path. So I support a community center 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner.
Yes, of course. I mean, Palm Beach County government is a leader in providing community centers that are county owned to the public for public use. Now, I think the question that you are asking is, would the county can fund, construct, and then deed over a county facility to a particular group? That's not something that government typically does, and it's not something that government probably should do, is be in the business of building things and then turning them over. It's a lot like a charter school in a lot of ways. But what I would say is that we oftentimes, as a board, have surplus lands or other lands that come into our possession that are typically, I don't know, a quarter acre to a full acre, that the county has no intent of building an actual structure on, but we hold it in our name and title. And what I think would be an excellent opportunity is to deed one of those parcels over to a particular group that has come to the table with a plan, with a funding strategy, with a vision to help participate in building that structure and allowing them to own, operate, and utilize it, both for their purposes and the community at large. So I think it would be a partnership where we give land and that institution or that community organization brings to the table a public-private partnership. So, you know, to the extent that certain institutions want us to build with taxpayer money a facility for their exclusive use is not something that I would support, and is not a model anywhere in our system of government. But if there was a public-private partnership with plans for fundraising, plans for utilization, I certainly would be a leader in deeding over some of our surplus property to that institution or group.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Juan Pagan, who is the current president of the Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber, is also a member of the HISPAC committee. Do you have any question for any of the candidates? You're on mute.
Good evening.
Thank you.
To everybody. One of the things, that we're looking at, as Santos mentioned initially, yes, that the projection of the Hispanic growth in Palm Beach County, and I've seen that. I've been the resident of this county for over 30 years. So when I came here, that my company moved me, the Hispanic population was less than 10%. Today, that has grown by leaps and bounds. And at the same time, when I look at our chamber, we have representation of over 21 countries from Latin America, the Caribbean, and they're Hispanic. And then we got to go back to the philosophy always, that in this country, one size fits all. Well, I have to tell you, no, that's not the case. One size doesn't fit all. You have 21 different countries with 21 different cultures. And yes, they came here to live the American dream and to learn. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that they abandon what they brought with them. So that culture will continue to be there. Then that has other consequences, because when situations like we're going through now with the pandemic, with the COVID-19, you have a lot of information that is available. It's only available in one language, in English. And there's not available in Spanish. It's not available in Creole. So again, people like Mirta, like myself, we engage our time to make sure it's translated, to make sure that it feels and it doesn't get into a legal boundary. So the question for both of you, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Maple, what would you do to try to help in a situation? Because COVID-19 is not going away anytime soon, and we don't know what is going to happen in the future. So how do we integrate that as part of the community in here?
So great question, and thank you, Juan. I got my degree in actually computer science, and one of the value adds that as part of my experience is being able to think using technology. And with technology, we should be able to implement strategies to make sure that no culture, no language, there's not a language barrier to the resources that they need. And so using technology is a way to go ahead and make sure that we have, as soon as something comes out, it automatically comes out in different languages. And this may be something that we may have to invest money in, but our community is asking for it. I've heard the same thing from the Haitian community, that they're asking for resources to be able to say, hey, we need to understand what's happening, and we don't. And so making sure that using technology is a way that I plan to use it very efficiently to be able to make sure that any notices that go out, they're interpreted in multiple languages. And I think that's going to be the most cost efficient way to be able to handle that.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner?
Well, everything that the Board of County Commissioners distributes, publishes, and gives to the community in terms of communications comes out in 3 languages. That's English, Spanish, and Creole. There are issues with the state government and the state legislature recognizing the value of that policy decision, and some of the stuff that they put out, particularly related to COVID, at most gets translated into Spanish, if at all. I can assure you, for example, our Combat COVID app, when we went into negotiations with them, they wanted to only do Spanish and English, and we had to fight to get Creole included in there. And obviously we were the decision maker, so it was. So when you utilize our county app, obviously now it's in Creole, Spanish, and English. But those are some larger issues that touch to some ideological differences that I have with state government and the federal leadership. But certainly everything we produce and publish in Palm Beach County is categorically distributed in all 3 languages. And I think that's, I guess Mr. Maples is saying that he would uphold our current policy, but the reality is that that policy was hard fought for, and oftentimes under-recognized for how valuable it is to people in this community that need that communication and that support structure the most. And when you look at where we are at in the pandemic, there was an article recently about the minority community school system, or the schools within those districts are the ones that are least attended by our public county school district students at this point. Whereas in the wider, more affluent communities up in North County, particularly Jupiter and Palm Beach Gardens, the attendance rolls are 2 or 3, 4 times higher in those communities because this pandemic has impacted struggling communities more than affluent ones. And that's a theme that we see time and again. And so this county's been a leader in every regard. So I've been criticized, believe me, I've been criticized by business community, by developer community. I can go on and on about our minority and women-owned business enterprise and our workforce housing. They call it big government, they call it unfair, they call it inequitable, but that's not inequitable and unfair to the people that need assistance the most. And the simple act of translating government communications into different languages is precisely the type of American spirit that we should have. And it's something that this county leads on, with all due respect.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. Next, we have Mr. Sam Ruman. And Mr. Sam Ruman is a member of HISPAC as well. Can you please let me know if you have any questions for the candidates?
I do. I actually have several questions for each candidate, and same question for both. The first question is, one of the goals of HISPAC is to inform the Hispanic community about each candidate, and I thank you both for being here. My question is, what steps has your campaign done to inform the community, the Hispanic community especially, about your platform and policies that you will implement? And either one of you could just answer first.
I'm happy to go first, but Mr. Maples, I'll defer to you if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, Sam, thank you for the question. I've gone door to door in the Hispanic community and knocked on people's door and shared with them my platform and asked for their support. And I've had Spanish people with me while I'm walking door to door in the community asking for their support. There's a Hispanic thing going on this Saturday. I'm involved in that as well. And so I'm involved in the Hispanic community tremendously because, I know I'm a minority just like the Hispanic community. And so I believe in the fundamentals of going to people, looking them eye to eye, shaking their hand. I don't know if I can say that nowadays live, but just being in community with people and reaching out to them and asking them and communicating with them at their level and their language and what they need. And so that's why I have people with me that look like the community when we're knocking door to doors and we're sharing our platform with people and making sure they know who I am and what I represent. And so that's what I've done, Sam.
Thank you. Mr. Kerner?
So Mr. Maples, and I respect anybody that puts their name on the ballot and wants to participate in our democracy and be an elected leader. And I'm going to circle back on some of the other comments that he made earlier tonight. But just evaluating what he said, he's gone door to door. He's shared his Hispanic platform, which he didn't discuss. And then he said there's a thing this Saturday night. I haven't had a campaign. I have been waking up every day for the last 5 months, working day in and day out to protect this community. And certainly people are allowed to express their opinion. People are allowed to yell and scream at me. People are allowed to believe that masks don't work. And Mr. Maples has participated in that. He shows up to county commission meetings and says that we shouldn't have to wear masks. And I appreciate that. I don't begrudge him for it. But let's first of all recognize that he skipped over the entire substance of the question. And the second part is, I'm not running a campaign. I'm running on my record of service. I don't know Mr. Maples very well. I don't know much about his campaign. But if you have any doubts about who I am, what I stand for, and what I'm willing to do for this community that I'm born and raised in and love with all my heart, Just look to my 10 years in public service, look to my time as a law enforcement officer and a special prosecutor. I don't have the ability to run a campaign in the traditional sense because of my duties as the county mayor, and I have no problems with that. I'm very proud to have served it in this capacity. I think we've served this county very well and very effectively under immense opposition to some very basic concepts. And all of those concepts, I'm fighting for the everyday working man and woman of this county. There are people in this county that are very wealthy that do not need to concern themselves with the COVID-19 response, that have plenty of money in the bank. But when it comes to disparities in education and it comes to disparities fighting for the everyday working man and woman of this county. There are people in this county. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, it started to cycle itself. So at the end of the day, when we talk about education outcomes and we talk about health outcomes from a public health standpoint, everything I do every day is to protect the hardworking everyday American in this county. And that's where that's the record of service, and that's the platform that I have for the Hispanic community and for every person in this county that needs a helping hand during this very difficult time.
Thank you, Mr. Garner.
Mr. Lustig, could I have a minute and 30 seconds in response to that?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. First and foremost, I think it's critical and very important that when you're in government and you have this record that speaks for itself, which has been very poor, especially as of late with the way COVID has been handled. But the point is, when you're sitting on this pedestal and the people down here and their businesses are closed and they need help and you need to hear from the people, you know what, keeping them safe is extremely important. That's part of government's responsibility, but also giving them take care of their families is just as important. And so while you say that you don't have to campaign, and I get it, and that's fine, that's your status, my role is to get out in the community and meet the people where they're at. And so as a leader, I think that's important. And so at the end of the day, if you don't have to campaign and you don't feel that's necessary, that's fine. I value people. I value hearing their story, and I value connecting with people. That's my greatest strength, and I won't let anybody downplay the fact that I love connecting with people and that I'm good at it. And so at the end of the day, that's part of my strategy. And when there's an opportunity to lift a community up, I definitely will. And that's why I serve on boards. That's why I serve in this community. And that's why I'm running for the county commission seat in District 3. Thank you, Mr. Lustig.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. Mr. Roman, you mentioned you had another question.
Yes, I do. What are the top 3 priorities for Palm Beach County Commission in the next 4 years, in your opinion?
Let's start with Mr. Maples.
Thank you, Sam. Top 4 things. First and foremost is, again, we have to get small businesses back going again. We have to open up the CARES Act money to allow them to move forward, whatever they need to protect their team, protect their patrons, their employees, their staff, the people who visit them and use their businesses and their resources. We have to get them working again, because those people take care of and hire people. And those people then can afford to live and they can afford to take care of their family. And then once we tackle that and get people back going again and get people able to take care of their family, and then we tackle, I believe there's going to be long greater than 4 years, but the mental health, behavioral health is going to be exacerbated. And then people are really going to be needing some help to be able to communicate with someone that they trust, to be able to find the resources that they need to be able to move forward. And then always, once things get back going again, for business owners, I work with small businesses. I have a small business. And when you're hiring people, one of the most important things is for them to be able to have an affordable place to live, so that's comparable with their pay. And so making sure that people can afford to live in Palm Beach County and work in Palm Beach County and raise a family here like I've done. And so those are the 3 things that are most important to me. And as I get in there, you know, really as a finance guy, making sure that the county is being wise and efficient with every dollar that's spent, taking that responsibility, because that's what I do for my clients. And that's the responsibility I built my career on. And so those are the 4 real main points that are important to me, is diving into that budget, making sure people are back to work, making sure there's resources for mental health, behavioral health, and affordable living for people in Palm Beach County.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. Mr. Kerner?
Certainly, COVID-19 operational response and working with the state government as we go through this difficult time period is job number 1 right now. We work very well with state government. Our CARES Act dollars are flowing. We have been the first large county that was carved out to move into phase 1, to move into phase 2, and to open our brick and mortar schools. I'm very proud of that. You can call it a failure, but from my perspective, a county of 1.5 million people getting opened earlier and with lower positivity rates than Broward and Miami-Dade is a huge success, and it speaks to gathering the value of the margins, meaning if we open a week earlier or 2 weeks earlier, that may not sound like a lot, but it's a huge deal to that business owner that Mr. Maples and I are both very concerned about. Obviously, moving beyond that, we have a homelessness issue in this county that I've reacted and responded to very forcefully in terms of requiring the vacating John Prince Park and utilizing our county facilities of over $8 million to build that or to rehab the annex out west on Southern Boulevard. We have the Lewis Center 2 going up in my district off of Lake Worth Road, just west of Congress. We have another one scheduled to go up through our 1 cent sales surtax, infrastructure surtax funds that will go out in Belglade and the Western communities. We have responded forcefully to homelessness. And of course, a vision and issue that both Mr. Maples and I see eye to eye on is the government intervention into affordable housing and workforce housing. That program passed under my leadership. It's been instituted under my leadership, and it's a heck of a program. You can look around this country and you'll see that special interests have beat back the ability of local governments to require or mandate the participation of the developer into the construction of those affordable units, not in Palm Beach County. This is where things happen, and I'm very proud of that. We need to continue to move that needle forward, but it's a great plan that is working and providing actual tangible results for this community and people that can't afford to work here. And then finally, I know it was capped at 3, but the fourth issue, and one that I'm very committed to, as you're well aware, is the enhancement of the minority and women-owned business enterprise. We are a $5.5 billion government. We are a $1 billion ad valorem government. We are one of the biggest county governments in this nation. If we cannot allow women and minorities to participate in the growth and success of this community, then we're not doing our job. So yes, big government is bad sometimes, but if you utilize the powers of big government correctly, like we have, like I have, when it comes to minority and women-owned business as an enterprise and giving an opportunity, a real opportunity for people to participate in our county contracts, that's something to be proud of. And I'm very proud of that, and I intend to continue that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. Mr. Roman, do you have any last question that you'd like to ask?
That's it, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I believe I covered every person. So I'm going to move.
I have one question, please. One of the things that is in the electoral ballot now for November is a proposal for the change of the minimum wage, for the people in Florida. And we know that decision is made at the state level. Well, what is your position regarding improvement of the minimum wage in the state of Florida? Mr. Maples?
So that amendment on the ballot, I believe if people understood moving to the $15 an hour, how that would affect them personally, they would vote no. Because at the end of the day, what it's sold as is like, hey, you just get excited, everyone's gonna make 15 bucks an hour. So what ends up happening? The owner of that restaurant, let's say, for example, he then lays off people because now they're making more money. So then they lose out, and the $15 an hour ends up being less technically than what they would have made from commission in the hours that they were able to make. And so ultimately more people lose jobs because now there's more money that these business owners have to be required to pay out. So they don't hire nearly as many people. And ultimately those funds then actually the people end up losing because the business owner then adjusts and corrects how he then gives them hours, how they're then, and so it doesn't, on the larger scale, it doesn't help the overall community because a lot of people, especially in the restaurant industry at certain restaurants, they make well over $15 an hour, $100,000 a year in some of these careers in restaurants as a waiter. They make more money, but if we were to move that to $15 an hour, that would actually affect our smaller community because business owners themselves would then make an adjustment to hours, to cost of their product and goods and services, and ultimately the minority communities would suffer the most because we're the ones who work in these positions. So that's that. And lastly, in this country, one of the things when you work harder for something, like digging potholes at night is what I spend a lot of my nights doing, putting up signs. when you work hard, ultimately, if you're working for tips, you work harder. And if you're, that's the deal. You serve better, you work harder, you go harder, you make more money. If the platform is like, hey, $15 and this and that, and you get your hours, there's no incentive to go harder, to be more efficient, to be better. And that's ultimately what makes, I think, all of us want to push for greatness and be able to make more money, is be able to offer a solution that allows our people to be able to be great at what they do. And I think that ultimately will allow them to excel and make more money.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. Commissioner Kerner?
You know, I'm not really sure how to decipher what Mr. Maples just said about that. First of all, it's $10 an hour with an escalator clause up until 2026 up until $15 an hour. But the initial vote is for $10 an hour. And I'll just let my ballot speak for itself. I've already filled it out, but the answer is yes. This concept that Mr. Maples has, that if you just work harder and dig potholes in the middle of the night, a living wage isn't necessary. Well, that's it. That is an ideological difference between Mr. Maples and I. If you work for the county government, you will make $15 an hour or more. If you think someone can work 40, 50, 60 hours a week at $8.78, and that if they just work harder and they have a stronger work ethic, and that, never mind wage theft, I mean, we can talk about that all night. That's a huge distinction between Mr. Maples and I, and it's a very disappointing response from him, but it is what it is. I've showed you how I voted. I showed you that I know the amendment. It's not $15 an hour, and that speaks to my record of service and my understanding of government. Mr. Maples is running to be 1 out of 7 people on a $5.5 billion budget, affecting 1.5 million people, and he rarely has any basic understanding of what it is we're discussing when it comes to technical proposals. And you should keep that in mind when you cast your vote.
And Mr. Lussing, I'd like 1 minute, 30 seconds to respond to that, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the reference of digging potholes at night, which means this: I work all day as a financial advisor, managing budgets and people's money. And then at night, when you're not campaigning, I'm out at night myself, digging potholes, putting my nice big signs up that says vote John Maples on November 3rd. That's what I mean by working hard. So working hard, you let the results deal for itself, and you work extremely hard. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you put in the effort and you give it 100%. That's what I teach my daughter. And so at the end of the day, that's all I'm saying. If we work hard as a community, just like having jobs, Dave, you wouldn't know anything about this because you don't own a business, you're on a government salary. So here, let me cue you in on something. Most people who own a business, they want to work. They want to work hard. They want to keep their doors open. They want to take care of their people. Okay, so that's what small business is about. And guess what? Those people work extremely hard, a lot of hours. Ask anybody that has their name on the door and that's responsible for people. They work more than 40 hours a week, 60, 80 hours a week starting a business over the first 5 years. That I do know. And I know how to look at a budget. And so when you vote in November 3rd, remember that you want somebody who's being efficient, who's a leader, who's not just going to go with the ebb and flow, who's going to step up, ask questions, and really try to figure out, hey, are we doing the best thing? Are we spending this the best way? Are there other solutions? And that's something that you're not doing. And that's why this county is asking for new leadership. Thank you, Mr. Lussing.
Thank you very much. And I just have a follow-up question based on the ballot and the amendment for the increase of the minimum wage. The ballot discusses that if the minimum wage is raised, there are certain governmental services that may have to be cut or may not be available anymore. I presume because just as businesses have to raise the minimum wage for their employees, the county is going to have to also raise their minimum wage for employees. So what is the plan of the county right now? This is for Commissioner Kerner, to deal with that issue, and how is that going to affect the communities around your district? Has there been any discussion concerning that issue? And then the same question is going to be for Mr. Maples as it relates to the that issue of potential loss of government services. Mr. Kerner?
There is no discussion that has been had or needs to be had. As I stated earlier in my communications to you, that the county has already raised the minimum wage for county. Hold on one second, my battery's dying. To $15 an hour. So a lot of it has to do with having to bring up municipal taxes to pay that initial $10 an hour with an escalator to $26 to $15 an hour. We're well above $10 an hour. We pay $15 an hour. There should be no transaction costs involved. And so there's been no discussion that have been required.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Maples?
So it's convenient when you work for the county and city government. You just raise everyone's taxes, and that's how you pay for it. The people that I work with and represent, small business owners, that the solution is not that easy. These are hardworking family and people, restaurant owners, people that work hard to give their people an opportunity to take care of their families. The solution isn't just raise taxes and everyone gets their $15 an hour. Really, the solution is, hey, does this make sense for us and our family? Will we be missing out on more money and opportunities if we raise this bill this bill ultimately leads to $15 an hour? Even if you accept it at 10, it's ultimately going to $15 an hour. So that's the real number you have to discuss and talk about, because that's ultimately where it will land. And so if we're forward thinking and planning on what it would look like when it does hit $15 an hour, we better start that discussion today, not then. But ultimately, the reality of it is, if we support this, a lot of small businesses are going to change their staffing, change their employees, change their hours, and it may affect the people who work for them to change their income as well.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Roman communicated to me that there's a question that comes from one of the viewers from Facebook Live. So, Mr. Roman, can you please ask the question?
Yes, there is. And one of the viewers from Facebook Live is asking to both candidates, as to the candidate, what will be the efforts of supporting, what will be your efforts to support our migrant workers that live and work in our county and our community, and our frontline workers during COVID, and are marginalized and need health services?
I can take that because I'm not sure what Mr. Maples can say, because our county has been progressive on this issue as well. We have non-congregate living in those communities out west and in the Ag Reserve. We have our healthcare district that is the only one in the state of Florida out of 67 counties that has a separate ad valorem millage rate attached to it that has gone directly to those transient communities that prop up our economy, who don't make $10 an hour. I can promise you that, and they would under this proposal. And with regards to transportation issues, we have issued and utilized our county buses and school district buses on occasion to make sure that as they travel around this county, it's something the governor and I spoke about directly, that they have the ability to socially distance themselves from each other. These are the hardest working people in the world. And so I appreciate that Mr. Maples has put up some signs for a couple of weeks. These men and women work 18 hours a day for less than $10 an hour. And so if you want to begrudge me for voting for that proposal to pay somebody a living wage, that's an ideological difference that Mr. Maples and I will never resolve. And so you'll have to make your decisions about who you vote for based upon our responses. There's a very clear distinction between both of us.
Thank you very much. And I believe we are coming to a conclusion. So each candidate is going to have 3 minutes to
Does
provide.
Mr. Maples want to respond to that very important question about?
I'm sorry. Mr. Maples, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please respond.
Thank you, Mr. Lussing. Well, I'm not sure if they've really said anything to answer the question other than the fact that they've got some stuff going on in the Ag Reserve. But ultimately, what I didn't hear is how are people accessing those resources? How are people understanding what's available to them? Is it in their language? Do they have access to it? And then how many people are accessing it? These are things that, when elected to the commission, that I'll be dealing with and figuring out, hey, are we, talking about reaching a community of minorities is one thing, but really reaching them and just creating programs that may or may not work, and you're spending money here and doing this, but are we really making a significant impact? Are people really being reached? And I think ultimately that's what's being missed here. And then in the response? Are the people really being reached? Are they really being helped? So I think that's what the person really wants to know. How is this going to help me? And really right now, obviously with the question, they're not getting the help and they don't know where to get the information that they're asking for. And really that's a problem. And that's one that I'm looking to solve.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. And as I was saying, we reached a conclusion to our candidate forum. So I would like to get closing arguments from each candidate. And Commissioner Kerner, you want to go first?
Absolutely. And I'm going to yield my time in talking about who I am and what my campaign is about, because I have a record of service in this county that speaks for itself. But I want, and particularly Murchison, she asked the question, when we were asked about voting for a minority access district in the Hispanic community, Mr. Maples said he wanted to be an active listener. Mr. Maples said he was concerned about the possibility of now having to provide for a minority access district to the African-American community. People speak their heart and they're usually honest when they speak to the public. Mr. Maples just told you about 45 minutes ago that he would not vote for a minority access district, and also revealed at the same time that he is apparently totally unaware that District 7 on the Board of County Commissioners, as a result of the Civil Rights Act of the 1960s, that we have a minority access district in Palm Beach County for the African-American community. I have voted for and will vote for, because active listening, while that might be great for Northwestern Mutual, who, by the way, I received an award from them in 2017 as the most effective government official in the state of Florida, and that's a huge honor from a big mutual fund, I guess. But at the end of the day, he's told you that he won't vote for that, and that he's totally unaware that there's a minority access district in our county already. Your vote matters. When you vote, remember what it is we said tonight. That's my closing statement.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Maples?
Thank you. First, I want to start by saying thank you to each one of you for taking out the time out of your busy schedules to hear us out, to vet the candidates, and to really hear our back and forth and banter of what we're trying to do to really support this community. So thank you for that. In closing, I think it's important that irregardless of what Dave Kerner says about what I know about the county commission, how much I do or don't know, I'm not a politician. I'm a business owner. Okay, that's first and foremost. But as a business owner, I know one thing: I'm very educated, and what I don't know, I'll take notes and I'll learn. And so while I don't know everything, but I do understand this, I understand people. I understand how to connect with people. I understand listening to people and then moving on what is important to the community. While you make light of me being not aware of every ordinance and law, you're 100% correct. I concede that. But what I am good at is leading. And that's what you failed to do during this pandemic. And so in closing, I think it's important that you, if we think about vision and we start thinking forward thinking, if you want strategy, if you want planning, if you want somebody who's going to be responsible with every dollar that comes into the county, as I'm responsible now for my clients' money, a guy who's a family guy who supports small business, then vote for me November 3rd, John Maples, and I look forward to having your support.
Oh, I want to thank Commissioner Dave Kerner and Mr. Joe Maples for participating in the candidate forum for the election of the commissioner for District Number 3 for the Palm Beach County Commission. I want to thank the viewers. I want to thank those who are going to watch this video in the future, and I want to thank Languilla News, HISPAC, and the Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber for making sure that this event could be transmitted to the voters of Palm Beach County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.